This is a May Luna Media production.
Welcome to the Synaptic Soul Podcast, where science meets spirit and they totally make out. I'm Ava Marie Anderson, your quantum-loving, spiritually savage bestie, here to prove your energy isn't mystical, it is measurable. And oh, quick heads up, if you hear snoring or grunting or a dramatic sigh mid-download, that is not a ghost in the machine. It's just my Frenchie co-hosts, Rocky and Rambo, vibing at their own frequency. Let's dive in. Let's start by clearing something up right out of the gate. Tattoos are not just art or rebellion or an aesthetic flair, and they never have been. Across cultures, timelines, and civilizations, tattoos were technology. They were rites of passage. They were markers of belonging and protection and status and grief and devotion and transformation. The idea that tattoos are just a personal expression is a very modern, very Western, very disconnected from the body take, and honestly, your nervous system knows that it's bullshit. So from a biological standpoint, tattooing is a deliberate interruption of the skin. And your skin is not just a wrapper. It is your largest sensory organ. It is packed with mechanoreceptors, nociceptors, thermoreceptors, all sending information directly to your brain. So when a needle repeatedly punctures the skin, especially with intention and pain and meaning involved, the brain doesn't log that as a neutral event. It logs it as a memory, as significance, as identity level information. And this is why tattoos acquired during emotionally charged periods like heartbreak or awakening or grief or rebirth feel different than the ones you got on a random Saturday because you were bored. Like pain plus meaning equals imprint. That's basic neuroscience. The amygdala and the hippocampus are more engaged when emotion and physical sensation are present, which then strengthens memory encoding. So when people say this tattoo changed me, they're not being poetic. They're actually being accurate. And now let's zoom out into the energetic and the ancestral layer, because long before we had language, the way that we think of it now, the body was the archive. Marks on the body told stories. They communicated lineage and spiritual initiation and survival status and the role within a community. Tattoos functioned like living sigils, symbols that bypass the thinking mind and speak directly to the subconscious in the field. They weren't meant to be explained, they were just meant to be recognized. And here's the part most people don't consciously realize. When you choose to permanently mark your body, you are telling your system this matters enough to become part of me. Not metaphorically, but literally. Ink lives in the dermis. Macrophages try to eat it and fail. Your immune system decides over time to tolerate it as part of you. And now sit with that. Your body decides to accept the symbol as self. This is why tattoos often arrive at thresholds like endings or beginnings or identity thefts or identity births or divorce or sobriety or motherhood or awakening or loss. They're closures and declarations at the same time. They say, we are not who we were before this moment, and then the body listens. And then spiritually, tattoos are anchors. They hold frequency, they stabilize intention, they remind the nervous system who it is when the mind forgets. And that's why some tattoos feel alive, like they're doing something, while others eventually feel flat. One was encoded with presence and the other was decoration. So before we talk symbols and before we talk placement, before we talk timing, understand this. When you tattoo the body, you are editing the story your nervous system tells itself about who you are. And that's not light work. That is exactly why it's so powerful. If tattoos are encoded memory, then placement determines how that memory functions. And this is where people get tripped up because modern tattoo culture prioritizes aesthetics over intelligence, but your body's not random. It is a map, a circuit board, a living interface between the nervous system, consciousness, and the field around you. But let's just start with the arms and hands. Arms are about action and agency and expression. They're how you reach and defend and create and interact with the world. Tattoos on the upper arms often carry themes of strength and protection and identity reinforcement. This is where the warrior symbols and lineage marks and power imagery live comfortably. The forearms, especially the inner forearm, are more vulnerable and more visible. Tattoos here tend to function as conscious reminders. This is how I act. This is what I stand for. You see them daily and they speak often. Hands and fingers are a whole nother level. Like they're spell work placements. Historically, markings on the hands were used for protection and oath binding or skill amplification. Anything tattooed on the hands moves fast. It's amplified. It's loud in the field, which is why people either love their hand tattoos instantly or they feel overwhelmed by them later. The magic works whether you meant it to or not. And now the chest and the heart. Tattoos here are felt more than seen. The chest is identity and breath and emotional processing. Tattoos over the heart often mark love and grief and devotion or soul contracts. They're intimate and they're heavy. They're not meant for casual symbolism. The sternum in particular is intense. It sits at the crossroads of breath and nervous system regulation and emotional memory. Sternum tattoos often accompany deep shadow work or grief alchemy or reclamation of the self after loss. And the back and the spine are ancestral highways. The spine is your vertical access, past to future, earth to sky. Tattoos along the spine are about timeline work and kundalini energy and ancestral integration. These tattoos often come with dreams or emotional purging or a sense of locking something in. Upper back tattoos tend to involve protection or burden release. Lower back tattoos relate to survival or sexuality and creativity and root safety, hence why they've been sexualized and misunderstood culturally. And then legs and feet are about direction. Thigh tattoos often involve sovereignty and body reclamation. Calves relate to endurance and momentum and how you move through life. Feet are destiny-level placements. Tattoos here often mark a literal or symbolic change in path. People who tattoo their feet frequently do so right before or after major life pivots. And then there's the polarity. Left side versus right side matters more than most people realize. The left side of the body is receptive. The left side of the body is the subconscious and the ancestral and the emotionally encoded. Tattoos on the left often heal and integrate and honor the past. The right side is projective and conscious and future-facing and action-oriented. Tattoos on the right declare and become and initiate. Your body already knows this. This is why people instinctively place grief on the left and power on the right without ever being taught. Placement's not about symmetry. It's about function. And your body's already speaking. The tattoo just gives it language. Let's talk symbolism, because not all symbols are created equal, and not all of them age well either. Trends fade, and archetypes endure, and your nervous system, bless it, is not impressed by what is popular on Instagram this year. Symbols work because the brain thinks in images and patterns long before it thinks in words. That's why religious icons and flags and logos and sigils have power. They bypass logic and go straight into association. Tattoos that last emotionally, energetically, psychologically, those are the ones that tap into archetypal language rather than aesthetic novelty. Sacred geometry is one of the most stable symbolic symptoms that you can work with. Like, these patterns mirror the mathematical structures underlying reality, spirals and ratios and symmetry. When placed intentionally, sacred geometry tattoos often create a sense of coherence in the nervous system. People with trauma histories and highly sensitive systems or spiritual overwhelm often feel more regulated after receiving them, and it's not mystical fluff. Repetition and symmetry calm the brain. And serpents are another heavyweight symbol. Across cultures, serpents represent transformation and kundalini energy and forbidden knowledge and death and rebirth. Serpent tattoos almost arrive arrive during calm periods, and I can say this because I have a giant snake tattoo on my right forearm. They come during shedding, an identity death, an awakening, and they keep working long after the ink heals. So if you're drawn to serpents, it's usually because something in you is molting. And then moons speak to cycles and emotional regulation and intuition and the feminine nervous system. Like moon phase tattoos often show up for people learning how to live cyclically rather than linearly, especially after burnout or betrayal or years of overriding their own rhythms. And then eyes are about awareness and protection. They symbolize witness consciousness, the part of you that sees without being consumed. Eye tattoos often sharpen perception. Like people report increased intuition and vivid dreams and heightened awareness after getting them. And again, that is not random. And animals, when chosen correctly, function as the spirit allies, not because they're cute, but because their behavior mirrors something that your psyche or your nervous system is integrating. Like wolves for sovereignty and loyalty, and birds for perspective and freedom, and insects for resurrection and adaptability. Like choose animals based on what they do, not by how they look. And here's the cautionary note. Symbols that you don't fully understand still work, but sometimes they work in ways that you don't anticipate. Tattoos don't care if you're ready. They respond to meaning, not intention alone, which is why discernment matters. When you get tattooed matters just as much as what and where. Like your nervous system is not static. It is more plastic during liminal periods, like moments of transition where identity is already loosened. New moons are excellent for tattoos related to becoming and identity shifts and new chapters. The subconscious is more receptive. The body is more open to encoding new self-concepts. Full moons are better for release and grief and closure and culmination. Tattoos done under full moons often carry an emotional purge before settling into peace. But the most potent timing is post-initiation, like after loss or after divorce or after awakening or after sobriety, after you've crossed something that you can't uncross. Tattoo here acts like a seal. They say, this chapter is closed, this one is embodied. And this is also why impulsive tattoos during emotional chaos can feel off later. Not because impulsivity is bad, but because the nervous system was still unstable. Integration matters. Tattoos are best received when the meaning has landed, not while it's still unraveling. And please hear this. Don't tattoo what you're still trying to become. Tattoo what you've earned and what you've survived and what you've integrated. Tattoos are not affirmations. They're declarations. If the nervous system doesn't believe the symbol yet, then dissonance sets in, and that's when people feel disconnected from their ink. But at the end of the day, tattoos are about authorship. Who gets to write the story of your body and culture and trauma? Like, is it gonna be the outside influences or is it gonna be you? Your body remembers everything, even what your mind is buried. Tattoos give the body a way to speak back, to mark survival, to anchor in truth, and to declare sovereignty. They turn skin into scripture. So when chosen with intention, tattoos become allies, and they regulate, and they remind, and they protect, and they witness. They say, I was here, and I lived this, and I became this. Like your body's not a scrapbook. It is a living codex. Every mark that you place on it is a sentence in the story that you are still becoming. And if that doesn't make you slow down and listen before your next tattoo appointment, I don't know what will. I want to end this episode by bringing it out of theory and into skin, because everything I've been talking about isn't abstract to me. It is lived, and it is written on my body. And when I look back at my tattoos now, not with the eyes that I had when I got them, but with the eyes that I have after becoming, it's almost funny how much my body knew before my mind ever caught up. So the first tattoo I ever got was a triquetra at the top of my spine when I was 17 years old. And I didn't have the language for it then, and I couldn't have explained it in a coherent or intellectual way. I just knew that I was magnetized to it. It spoke to me, and it felt ancient, and it felt like home, and I knew it was Celtic, and I knew it was old, and that was enough. But what I didn't know at 17, but I understand very clearly now, is that I placed that symbol exactly where ancestral memory lives, at the top of the spine, at the axis point between mind and body, and past and future, and earth and sky. I marked myself with a symbol of interconnectedness and cycles and eternal return before I ever understood that my life would be about weaving science and spirit and lineage and consciousness into one coherent thread. Like, that tattoo wasn't teenage rebellion, it was recognition. And then, yes, I did what many of us did in the late 90s. I got a tramp stamp, and at the bottom of my spine lives a fairy. And for a long time, culturally speaking, that tattoo was framed as unserious and hypersexualized and dismissed. But here's what I know now. That lower spine is creation energy. It's sexuality, it's survival, it's pleasure, it's power. And that fairy, whether I knew it consciously or not, was sex pot coded and liminal coded and otherworld coded. A being between the realms, a being that doesn't belong to polite society or rigid rules. I marked my creative center with magic and autonomy and sensuality long before I had the language for sovereignty. My body wasn't confused, society was. And then fast forward many years, many years, and 6 years ago I tattooed the words "I am" on my left forearm during one of the most intense spiritual awakenings of my life. Like, this wasn't a cute affirmation, it was survival. This was a reminder etched into my receptive side, my subconscious side, that divinity is not external, that I am God, that you are God, that consciousness is wearing skin for the experience. And every time I look down at that arm, my nervous system is reminded of truth, not belief, truth. That tattoo regulates me, it anchors me, it brings me back to center when the mind starts spiraling into separation. And then about a year later, I tattooed the word trust on my right wrist. And I love the polarity of that now, because that wasn't about integration. That was about movement and action and future. I had a dear friend, an oracle, who knew that I was standing at the edge of something that I couldn't see yet. And I didn't need more information, I just needed trust. And so I put it on the side of my body that acts and that reaches and that chooses. Every time I extend my hand into the world, there it is. Trust. Not passive, not abstract, but lived. And then came the tattoo that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. Right after my divorce, I tattooed my right forearm from wrist to elbow with a serpent, an arrow, the crescent moon under which I was born, the Libra symbol, and sacred geometry. That piece wasn't about healing, it was about becoming. The serpent taught me that transformation is sacred, that shedding is not failure, that rebirth is not optional if you want truth. That arrow reminds me that movement matters, that intention has direction, that I'm not meant to stagnate. The moon speaks to my cycles, my emotional intelligence, my intuition. Libra anchors me into balance and beauty and justice, not the polite kind, but the embodied kind. And the geometry stabilizes it all, reminding my nervous system that chaos always resolves into the pattern if you let it. So when I look at my body now, I don't see a collection of tattoos, I see a timeline. I see initiations, I see a conversation between my soul and my cells that's been happening my entire life. My body knew who I was becoming long before my mind was brave enough to follow. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this episode, it's this. Your body's not random. Your tattoos are not accidents, even the ones you got before you knew better. Especially those. Your nervous system has always been listening to something deeper than trend or logic. It's been listening to truth. Your skin is not decoration, it is testimony. You have been listening to the Synaptic Soul podcast, where science meets spirit and they totally make out. If this episode hit your frequency, do me a favor, rate it, review it, and share it with your fellow quantum weirdos. It helps the wavelength reach more souls. And if you caught a little snoring, that wasn't a portal, just my Frenchies Rocky and Rambo offering background blessings. Music is Cheat Code by 1,000 Hands, used under Creative Commons. And I am Ava Marie Anderson. Stay weird, stay wired, and keep making out with your higher self.